All right, students, welcome back to another live stream, live lesson. For those that haven't been with us before, I am Chase from Star Tutors, here to lead you through the lesson. Today we're going to be talking about the ACT math section, so try to keep your comments as much as you can towards the ACT math test. We're going to be talking about specifically our strategy, what we call our three-pass strategy related to this ACT math section, and then we'll get started here in just a second. When you're, if you're part of the live chat today, part of the live stream, that's available to everybody. But please make sure that you guys know that we also have private live chats for our membership program, as well as premium content. We posted about that in the comments section of the live chat, as well as below the video. If you're interested in joining the silver membership, that's only $3 a month, and it gets you access to hundreds of additional hours of ACT and SAT content. So please make sure that you check that out. Again, you can click the join button below to learn more, but that's $3. We also have a gold membership that has 40 hours of ACT and SAT lessons, 40 hours taught by me in a 10-lesson course. So that's $30 a month. If you're interested in that, check that out. If nothing else, guys, please make sure you do two things. They are both free. If you're not interested in paying the money, which I still think is very, very valuable, especially if you're buying a book, I think the membership program is much better than buying a book, but that's just me. If you don't want to purchase anything though, at least subscribe to the channel. That's of course 100% free. And make sure that if you haven't already, you download Star U. Download Star U in the App Store or Google Play. Star U in App Store or Google Play. Or log in or create a student account at one second here again. Info. But those two things are free, guys. So download Star U and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done those things already, they are free. Okay, guys, so yeah, let's get into this. So we had a couple questions here, and one of them actually relates. Sahaj, welcome to the live chat. Again, if you guys are in the live chat, can everybody give me a thumbs up? If you don't want to participate in the live chat, that's fine. Just give a thumbs up below the video, and we'll get going here. I also, one of our teaching assistants posted the link to this particular test that you're seeing on my screen. Posted the link to that test, so if you guys want to follow along, you certainly can. For those that are watching the recorded video, Sahaj just posted a great question about feeling like the math section has a lot of misdirected questions. It's not that it's misdirected. It's that the math section on the ACT does have a significant number of concepts. I think the math section is very straightforward in terms of the questions on the ACT, but you're right in saying that the misdirected questions are just things that that are in a lot of ways unimportant. They don't test your ability of like the common concepts of Algebra 2 or pre-calculus. They ask you some pretty obscure questions on the math section. So in that realm or in that way, I completely agree with you that you see some of these questions. But the reason I bring that up is because that leads really well into our discussion today. Okay, so that if you feel like you're taking the ACT math test and there are some of these questions where you're just like, what in the world is going on? I don't know what they're talking about. If you're in that boat, give me a thumbs up, whether you're in the live chat or if you're following along in the recorded lesson, that you feel like, hey, there are a couple questions here where I have no idea what is going on, and it just feels completely overwhelming. Thumbs up if you feel like you're in that boat for the ACT math test. And the reason that's a great question or a great comment to bring up, Sahaj, is that in those instances, we need to implement this three-pass idea. Okay, so when we talk about the Star Tutors, if you guys haven't seen some of our videos before, Star Tutors 3-pass math, right? If you haven't seen these videos before, I highly encourage you guys to check them out. Some of our real-time videos incorporate a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, where I actually take these tests in real time, seeing them for the first time, trying to implement these strategies and ideas in real time so that you guys can see, hey, it really is stressful for me, just like it's stressful for you. No matter how often you do this, no matter how many times you see this, it is still stressful. There are still questions that throw you off, that don't feel great for one reason or another. That could be because, in that particular instance, that moment in time, hey, I'm not feeling great about this. Or it could be because you have no idea what the concept is talking about. In either instance, in either case, we need to make sure that we are identifying questions that we do know how to answer. it's amazing, having done this for as long as I have, how often we see students who are very, very worried about the questions they don't know how to do, where they make simple mistakes on questions that they do know how to do, but the first thing that they think about coming out of it
I need to find the best way.
right? The best thing that they think about coming out of it is, what is it that I need to what is it that I need to work on, rather than how many simple mistakes did I make during that test. Does that make sense? Can everybody give me a thumbs up if you're in that boat? Right, where you are thinking about the questions that you didn't know how to do. Maybe there's one matrix problem that you didn't know how to do. But in reality, if you look back at your test, there were also 10 simple mistakes. And everybody's worried about the one problem that they didn't know how to do, rather than worrying about, why did I make 10 simple mistakes? And in a lot of ways, those 10 simple mistakes are because during the test, we are worried about the one question that we don't know how to do. And we need to eliminate that. We need to try to avoid that thought or that feeling as much as we possibly can. Okay, so thumbs up, guys, if that makes sense. And so in light of that, and having seen so many student score reports, we developed this idea called the Star Tutors 3-pass method. For anybody that has ever studied computer science, you guys are relatively familiar with this, or if you're a high-level math student and you've studied some idea of algorithms, there's an algorithm in computer science. Well, it's a math algorithm called the sorting algorithm that is used extensively in computer science. It was used even more so back when computers were less sophisticated, but even today, the sorting algorithm is extremely important. And what the sorting algorithm says, and again, this was kind of the basis of early computer science and how computers helped in a lot of ways, and we're going to try to implement this as part of our strategy. The beauty of what we talk about and what we do in these lessons, guys, is that it is all objective, mathematically speaking. All of the strategies intentionally that we have created, that I have created, are designed to be mathematically certain. And the reason that's important is because you shouldn't go into a test like this feeling emotional, right? It shouldn't be like, I think this is how it, you should be like, this is how I want to approach this because it's mathematically based. Thumbs up if that makes sense, because that's what the sorting algorithm is. And so again, anybody that's participated in computer science, or that you know about this sorting algorithm, the idea is that we have a certain number of questions on the test. And let's just take 3 questions as an example. Okay, if we take 3 questions as an example, right? We have this, right? These bars. Let's say that these represent questions. Okay. Now the thing about the ACT that everybody misconstrues is that there's a certain level of question, right? That there are difficult questions. We don't know realistically where those questions are going to come up. Now the ACT math section does a nice job of relatively speaking, the first 20 questions are going to be easier than the last 20 questions. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to find questions in the last 20 that you do know how to answer. And so when we think about this, the ACT math section can, in a lot of ways, and the science section is the same way, we've developed this for the science test as well, the ACT math section can be thought of as these blocks, right? These barriers. And if we think about that, give me one sec, guys. Think about that. Sorry about that, guys. As typical of our these live streams, sometimes I have a dog and a cat that love to play outside of this room, and they just make a huge ruckus, so it's distracting. But in any case, guys, back to where we were. Okay, talking about this sorting algorithm. If anybody else is in that same boat with a dog and a cat, you guys get it. Okay, but when we talk about this sorting algorithm, we get back to this 3-pass method. What we're really seeing is that we have different levels of boxes that we have to jump on, right? We have to figure out which questions are easy. Who's seen this before? Who understands? Thumbs up, or just give me an I understand in the chat if you're part of the live chat. If you've seen this before, this idea makes sense as a representation of the question. Sometimes we feel like we're jumping up kind of to a medium level box, and then, oh, boom, we find an easy question, we're feeling great. And then right after the easy question, we jump up to the high box, and we're like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do on this question, right? I have absolutely no sense as to what I'm supposed to do here. And this level right here, what you're seeing here is very, very, very inconsistent. Okay, it's very, very inconsistent because we don't know where the easy questions are going to come. Who's ever felt that way? Thumbs up, guys, if you felt that way in the middle of a test where you're just like, what happened? You just start to feel like you're collapsing because there's 3 or 4 questions in a row where you don't feel great. That cannot happen. So what the sorting algorithm would do in computer science, just to give you guys some fun perspective on this, is the sorting method would comb through every single level of the boxes, right? It would figure out the heights of the boxes, and it would go through, let's say, all 60 questions on the math test, and it would line up the single easiest, right, the single shortest box, or in our case, the single easiest question first. Okay, it would line up the single easiest question first, and so our first box would look like that. And then it would go back to the beginning. Now, obviously, I'm not asking you guys to do it in that sense, right? To go all the way through and only find one question, but that's how the sorting algorithm works, and in some senses, that's what we're doing as well. Okay, and then we line up the next box, right? It would comb through all of the rest of the test. And so we're not going to think about this as every individual question. We're going to think about it in 3 levels, that there are 3 levels of the test, and there are 3 levels of math questions related to the ACT math section. Right? And so we ask ourselves, which of these boxes is more consistent, right? Which of these levels of boxes is more consistent? Would we rather have option 1, where we're jumping from medium to low, oh no, we've gotten to hard question, or would we rather just jump from one box to the next, feeling confident, and if at the very worst, right, the very worst situation happens, let's say we run out of time right here. Well, guess what, guys? That's not that big of a deal. Because when we do run out of time, right, let's say we run out of time on the single hardest questions, we haven't sacrificed any easy questions just because we didn't have time to get to those. This works exceptionally well in the science section as well. So we have a video called the 3-pass science strategy, which is essentially the same thing. Science is just a little trickier because the questions are less familiar to many of you. Right, but the math section, this can be implemented as well, where we're not thinking about these questions in a way that says like, oh, I need to do this in order. Now, the key to this is that many of you probably haven't taken a test like this before, this idea of skipping questions, but skipping them intentionally. Many of you guys probably haven't done this before. And so one of the constant feedbacks we get is like, well, I don't want to skip that many questions. Guys, I have to be honest with you that if you're unwilling to do this, if you're unwilling to practice this, you are at a material disadvantage to every other student that is willing to put this into play, because this is objective. You are looking for the easiest questions, the ones that are not going to be likely to make a simple mistake, and you're leaving out all of the most difficult questions. And so anytime we get some pushback on this, this is not me making this up, right? And that's the thing that we really want to communicate in these videos. This is not me just making up something, right? And that's what drove me crazy. When we started this company and started this YouTube channel, there were so many companies that I had been trained by that were just basically making up strategies. For example, the Princeton Review does this 20-20-20 strategy where you do the first 20 questions in 30 minutes, the next 20 questions in 20 minutes, the final 10 questions in 20 minutes. Sorry, the first 30 in 20 minutes, the next 20 questions in 20 minutes, and the final 10 questions in 20 minutes. That makes absolutely zero sense. It's one of the worst strategies ever created, yet one of the biggest tutoring companies that promotes that. That is not the way to take this exam. You should be looking for the questions that make the most sense to you, and if you know how to do them, you need to make sure that you answer them with 100% accuracy. If you don't know how to do them, then you just skip it, and that's the beauty of this strategy, is that if you answer 40 questions on the ACT math section, you can look at, we'll talk about this at the end, but if you get 40 questions done, and then you guess, which is essentially this pass 3, right? You guess on the final 20 questions, you are statistically guaranteed to get a 28 on the ACT math test. You're going to guess some of those questions right. So again, guys, 2 thumbs up if this makes sense, right? Where you are jumping levels to see if you can get to this final point. Thumbs up, guys, if this makes sense. And again, the worst case scenario, if you implement this, the worst thing that could happen to you is that you have to guess on questions that you've already deemed to be difficult. Right, you're not guessing on questions, or better yet, you're not rushing through questions that you otherwise should be able to answer, but you don't because timing's a factor, or you're looking to get to the end of the test. You don't have that problem anymore. Instead, we're just looking at the questions that we definitely know how to do, and if we do that, all of a sudden the test becomes much, much easier, much more straightforward. Okay, we're only looking. I mean, think about that, right? Think about this idea that if we were to go through the test and find the 40 easiest questions, and I'll show you guys this, it's probably a good time to talk about it, right? 40 easiest questions that would qualify as pass 1 which are the absolute easiest questions, generally very straightforward, okay? If we were to find all of the past 1 questions, and then all of the past 2 questions, and then guess on the final past 3 questions, right? These are the easy, less time-consuming questions. Easy, less time-consuming, right? Past 1 obviously falls a lot of the time at the very beginning because those are generally easier. But there are questions at the end that many of you guys can answer. And then past 2 can qualify to every question up until the point where you need to guess. And then past 3 is what we call the guessing letter, right? We find our guessing letter. Now, if you guys don't believe me, let's go down to the scale on this particular test form, right? And if you guys are following along, the test is, let me show you what happens, right? Let's say theoretically, and again, this is not how I would recommend approaching this, but let's say theoretically we were to get the first 40 questions done. Well, first and foremost, right, I said earlier that guarantees you a 28. If you get 40 questions done on the math section, just 40 out of 60, which in school feels like a 66%, that's equivalent to a 28, and I'll show you why here in a second. Because if you're accurate on the 40 questions that you know how to do, it feels like a D in the American, right? This would be a D in the American education system. A 28 as an equivalent is in the top 10% on the math section of all students that take the ACT math test. So it feels like a 66 is actually a 90%, right? Is an A- on this exam. And let's say then that we guess, right? We're not getting 40 questions right and then getting 20 questions wrong. No, we're getting 40 questions right, and then with about a minute, 2 minutes to go, we're finding our guessing letter, and we're going to guess the rest of the way down. Of those 40 questions, if you just statistically, not even with any type of guessing strategy, you just guess, right? You're statistically going to get 4 of those right. 4 out of 20 is 1/5, and that's how many guessing letters, that's how many guessing columns or answer choices there are on the math test. So statistically speaking, you, like I said before, you are guaranteed to get a 28 on any recent math test. Okay, but if we back that up and we say, let's say we use a guessing strategy, and for those that have watched our other videos, our guessing strategy is to find the least used answer choice that you have used to that point. If you have guaranteed that you've gotten 40 questions right, I'm just going to use the first 40 on this particular math test. This will work no matter which 40 you answer, this will always work. But we're going to go back, we're going to look at the answer choices that we have not used, right? The ones that we've used the least by just looking back at our bubble sheet. If we implement this, look how many questions we pick up at the end. Let's see, which is the best guessing letter? Maybe E and K. We have 1 E, 2 K, 3, 4, 5, right? D and J might be the other one. Let me see. DJ, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so if you pick, right, the columns on the test will be D and J or E and K. It's based on column, not letters. So don't be counting up the letters. It's based on the columns, right? You can picture that in a bubble sheet. You actually end up picking up 5 additional questions. Okay, now on this particular test, that wouldn't matter, right? You wouldn't get any bump. You can see here that 45 questions out of 60 still gets you a 28. But the whole point of this is to say that you are statistically guaranteed to get those scores. That you are statistically guaranteed to get those scores. I mean, think about that. That if you went into the test on Saturday or your next ACT exam and you only thought to yourself, I need to get 40 out of 60 questions right. Psychologically, what the reason that doesn't make any sense, or the reason that it's so hard to implement this psychologically, is because for the last 10 years of our schooling, we've thought about a 66% as a D, as a poor grade, as a relatively poor grade. But in reality, that puts us in the top 10% of all students by accurately answering 40 questions, right? And then applying a guessing letter at the end of the test to guarantee that we pick up another 4 or 5 questions. Okay, so again, we have to make sure that we're implementing this. The reason I'm so adamant and talk so, kind of intensely about this strategy is because that it is mathematical, right? It is not me making something up or trying to figure out ways to beat the time. It's finding the 40 questions that you know how to do to get a 28 on the math section. And if we can do that, then you can implement this for every math test you've ever taken. Going back to Sahaj's comment, which was a great one to start this video about, I feel like there are misrepresented questions or ones that just confuse you on purpose. That might be true, but if you come across those questions, there's not going to be 20 of them, right? So if you're trying to get, and the beauty of this is it works at every level. Let's say instead of getting a 28, you want to get a 33. Well, if we look at this, we can see pretty clearly that if we get 50 questions right, we only have to guess 3 of the final 10, and that's pretty statistically guaranteed. It's right. If we guess 3 of the final 10, we still get a 33. So we have to get 50 questions right. So if you're trying to get a 33, instead of going into it thinking, how am I going to get to all 60 questions? You want to go into it saying, I'm going to skip the 10 hardest math questions, skip 10, and I'm going to take that time that I would have spent on those 10 difficult questions, and I'm going to apply it to make sure that I get all of the other 50 questions that I do know how to answer. I'm going to get all of those questions right. And if I do that, I know that I'm going to guess the final 10 questions, and I'll probably end up with a 33 on the test based on our guessing strategy, but at the very least, I end up with a 32. Okay, guys, so again, thumbs up if this makes sense. Thumbs up if the idea makes sense. That we are taking this sorting algorithm idea, right now going back, and we're only finding questions that we know how to answer. So the way that we teach it to our students is that after 30 seconds, we give students about 30 seconds to determine if you know how to answer the question, right? So if this is pass 1 or pass 2, we give students 30 seconds. You're going to go through the test. The first time you get 30 seconds. Pass 1 rather is 20 seconds. So if you can't figure it out in 20 seconds, it's not a pass 1 question. And if you come back and you can't figure out what you're supposed to do in 30 seconds, it's not a pass 2 question. You're saving that to guess. Because that would then put you at 50 total seconds, right? That puts you at 50 seconds of just determining if you know how to do it. And if at 50 seconds you don't know how to do the question, you got to move on. So pass 1, you get 20 seconds to look at the question, determine if you know how to do it. And if the decision is, yes, I do know how to do this question, you need to make sure that you answer that question with 100% accuracy. 100% accuracy. If the answer to that is no, I have no idea how to do that, then you need to skip that question, right? And it's just that easy. And the beauty of doing this is that if you apply this idea, if you get 40 questions right, 40 questions on the math test, you find the 40 questions, which means you skip 20. You want to think about this as, how do I skip those 20 difficult questions, right? How do I skip that? Okay, and that is always going to be equivalent to at least a 28 on the exam. By answering 66% of the questions, only 2/3 of the questions, you are statistically guaranteed to get a 28. If you want to get a 32, right, on this particular test, it would have been a 33, but if you answer 50 questions right on any recent test, which means that you can skip 10 questions, you're statistically guaranteed to get a 32 on the math section on any recent test, right? We get 50 questions right, and then we guess the rest of the way down on the 10 that we don't know how to do. As long as we're 100% accurate on these questions, right? 100% accurate on all of our pass 1 and pass 2 questions, we are statistically guaranteed to get a 32, and we can skip the 10 hardest questions. And again, the beauty of this is that it works at every level. We constantly get questions from students about how do I get better on the math section, right? Or how am I going to improve? I feel so overwhelmed. Part of that is thinking about the score and not thinking about what it's going to take to get to that score. And so if you're sitting there, right, and by the way, guys, to capitalize on this one more time, if you're trying to get to a 24 or 25, if you answer just 30 questions correctly, that means that you skip half the test. You skip 30 questions. But on the other 30, you know how to answer those questions. You've determined that you know how to answer them. And by taking the time completely away from the questions that you've skipped, you're now going back and you're applying that time to the 30 questions that you do know how to do. You are statistically guaranteed to get a 24 or 25 on the math section by skipping half of the test. So guys, if you have a goal score in mind and you're not already implementing this, right, you should go in thinking about, how do I find these pass 1, pass 2 type of questions. Pass 1 are ones where you look at it and you immediately know what to do. Let me give you an example of what a pass 1 question looks like. Right, these 2 questions, number 2, right, and number 4 should be immediate questions. Now, if you don't remember absolute value, then you got to skip it. Then it's a pass 3 question, and that happens sometimes. When there's a concept that you don't know how to do, you sometimes just have to skip it. Okay, but number 4, right, if you know how to do absolute value, this is 2, right? 3 minus 8 is -5, but if we absolute value that, that's 5, positive 5. And then we have 2 minus 5, right? Because the absolute value changes a negative to a positive, essentially. And so now we do that first. Those are like parentheses. Now we have 2 minus positive 5, and we get -3 as our answer. Does everybody see that if you know how to do that? Thumbs up that if you know how to do that question, it's very, very straightforward. Number two, right? The point of a past one question is that you can immediately determine within 20 seconds that you know how to do it. And a lot of times that's the shorter answer questions. On pass, that's pass one, sorry. On pass number two, if you come back to those, right, you go all the way through the test looking for these pass one, 20 seconds, boom, I know how to do it. I'm going to get this one right. And if you don't know how to do it, you move on. And then you come back to the beginning, you say pass two, if I can't answer this or I don't know what to do in the first 30 seconds of this question, I got to save this and I'm going to use that for my guessing letter. That's one of the questions that I'm going to skip. But on these pass one questions, right, we're just combining like terms. We get negative 4x cubed, right, minus 12x cubed. We combine like terms, and we get negative 16x cubed. So right away, boom, 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 we can eliminate those answer choices. And now we just have plus 9x squared, so we answer with J. Now I understand that those questions are very straightforward and very easy, but that's the point, right? These are pass one questions. Okay, these are pass one questions. We're looking for questions that take us no more than 20 seconds. Number 3 is a question that looks like that. Whereas even if question number 7 ends up being easy, in all likelihood, this is probably going to be a pass 2 question. If you skip these questions, it's not like this time just goes away. You go all the way through the test looking for these 30 questions or whatever for pass 1, and when you come back, you still have 30 minutes left to come back and determine what you're supposed to do on pass 2 with a lot less anxiety. Because, hey, I have 30 questions left in 30 minutes. I'm trying to get a 32 on the math section. So of the last 30 minutes, I have to answer 20 of the remaining questions that I skipped. Of the 30 that I skipped, I have to answer 20 of those in pass number 2 to guarantee myself a 32 on the math test. That's the idea, that you're jumping from one pedestal to the next rather than going up and then down and then up, and it's this lack of momentum. Right, when x equals 2 for number 2, again, we can't make simple mistakes, but if you know how to do this question and you remember PEMDAS, this doesn't take very long. We get 12 divided by 2 times 3 is 6. That's all in parentheses, so we need to do that first. So we get then 2, 3 times 2. Right, you'll see that I'm writing all of this out. 10 plus 3 times 2 is 10 plus 6, and so we know the answer is just B. That probably took me 20 seconds to do total, not even just to determine what I was supposed to do, but 20 seconds total to answer that question. And I'm 95% sure that I got it right. I'm not trying to make any simple mistakes. And now I move on to the next one. Okay? Again, this is so critical as we look through this exam not to be overwhelmed by any individual question. Because every question is not equal on this test. They're all equal value, but when we know that the difficulty ranges from 1 to 3, we need to find, and that's true, the ACT ranges, same with the SAT, and we've done videos on the SAT 3-pass method. These videos range from 1 to 3, or I'm sorry, the questions range from 1 to 3 in terms of difficulty. So by all necessary measures, mathematically, objectively speaking, we can't afford to not implement this. And let me tell you guys, we have a lot of students that are already implementing this. So if you're not one of the students, if you look at this and you're like, I don't understand what's going on, and you're afraid to ask questions or afraid to try this, you are at a statistical disadvantage from every student that is trying this. And I know that there are a lot of students out there that are doing this. Just mathematically speaking, that's not me making it up or me making assumptions about you as a test taker. That is 100% mathematically speaking, that if you're making simple mistakes because you're looking at a difficult question followed by 3 easy questions, and you miss one of those easy questions because you're still thinking about the hard question, that's a problem. We should have skipped the hard one, done the 3 easy ones first, and then we can make a determination on the hard one. Okay, thumbs up, guys, if that idea makes sense. That's the 3-pass method, and again, that's based on a computer science, a mathematical algorithm, the sorting algorithm, that's generally used in computer science, early computer science in particular. Now as computers have gotten, they're trying to calculate 5 trillion items in 5 seconds, that's less effective. But early computers use the sorting algorithm to the nth, right, to maximize efficiency, and that's what we're trying to do here too. We're trying to maximize your efficiency so that the questions that you see are only the ones that are most optimal to you to answer in that moment. So that's the rule you should probably stick with, right? You should stick with this idea that you probably have 20 seconds on pass 1. If you can't look at a question, right? I looked at questions 2, 3, and 4, and I knew what to do within 20 seconds. So those are pass 1 questions. If you can't do it within 20 seconds, skip it for the time being. If you come back to the question, right, so now we've gone through all and found all the questions that look like 2, 3, and 4, And it's not just at the beginning. Let me give you guys an example. I just randomly scrolled down to number 25, and I saw a triangle problem, which shouldn't be that difficult. If side AB, right, is equal to side AC, well, that means that these two angles, by an isosceles triangle theorem, right, that those two angles would also be equal. So if this is 58 and these two angles are equal, we just do 180, right? 180 minus 58 is equal to what? 122. And then we know that we're looking for both angle B and C. We have to divide by 2. So we end up with 61 degrees for angles B and C. That took me 20 seconds probably total to answer, and I didn't have a calculator while I was doing it. And those are the types of questions we're looking at. This is without doubt, if you like triangles, this is still a pass 1 question, even though it shows up at number 25. Does that all make sense, guys? And again, we can continue to do this all the way through the test. There are easy questions all the way through. We just have to be looking out for those. Okay, we just have to be looking out. Let's see if we can find another one. Let's see if we can find one that's at the end. What is the area in square units of a circle that has a circumference? Right? Well, first and foremost, if that should be a really straightforward question if we know circumference and area, even though it shows up at number 43, and even though every other person in the world would think that that was a hard question, we say 2 pi r is equal to 12 pi, because that's our circumference equation for a circle. We divide by 2 pi on both sides to see what our radius is. So we get r is equal to 6. Now we're looking for the area. What is the area in square units? So we say pi r squared now for area of a circle. And we go pi 6 squared is equal to area. And we know that the answer to that question for 43 is 36 pi, d. And again, that took us less than 20 seconds to figure out. It probably took us less than 20 seconds to actually answer the question. We're looking for those questions first, and then we can always come back after we're done with the first pass, and we'll find that we probably have 40 minutes left for 30 questions. Now, the past 2 questions are going to be a little bit harder, a little bit longer to determine, but we've given ourselves enough time. And better yet, we know our fundamental ideas in terms of how many questions we need to answer to reach certain score levels. All right, that's the 3-pass method. And again, it's all mathematically speaking, this is all very straightforward. So I want to leave it there so that we don't make the video too long. I want everybody to work on this and understand this 3-pass idea as much as you possibly can. But guys, thumbs up if this makes sense. One final thumbs up. If you have any questions for us related to this particular strategy, please don't hesitate to comment in the comment section below this video. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel and that you register your free Star U student account. If nothing else, do those 2 things. I promise it'll be really helpful. So Star U student account and subscribe to the channel. Please help us continue to spread the word about these videos too, guys. I know that it's the more, again, the more subscriptions that we have, the free subscriptions, the more of these videos we can produce for you. So please help us spread the word and subscribe if you haven't already. And then again, if you're interested in joining the membership program, don't forget that that's $3 a month, and it gives you access to significantly more premium ACT and SAT content. So look out for that. Again, I highly encourage you to look at the membership program. Certainly if you're going to buy a book, $3 a month is definitely better than some $30 book, right? I promise it'll be worth it. All right, if nothing else, guys, have a great rest of your day. Great job. Keep working hard. Good luck on your next ACT. And again, if you have any questions, make sure that you comment those below the video. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys soon for the next video.